Park Do-yoon was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. This was a deeper thing, something that had settled into his bones during 16 years of war. He had joined the United Earth Marine Corps when he was 19 years old, full of fire and stupid courage. Now he was 35, and most of his left arm was metal. His right knee was synthetic. There was a chip in his skull that helped him see in the dark, and another one near his spine that dulled the pain that never really went away. He had killed more enemies than he could count. He had watched friends die in ways that still visited him in his dreams. And when the wars finally slowed down and the military told him he could go home, he realized he did not have a home anymore. His family was on Earth. His sister Bomi sent him messages every week, telling him about her children and her job and the weather in Busan. He read every message. He never replied. He did not know what to say to people who had never seen the things he had seen. So when the old orbital station came up for sale, Do-hyun saw his chance. The station was called Halo 9. It floated in empty space between Earth and the Moon, forgotten by everyone. A corporation had built it 70 years ago during the second expansion, when humanity was spreading across the solar system like fire. But the corporation had failed, and the station had been left to rot. No one wanted it. The auction price was low enough that Do-hyun could afford it with his military pension and the money he had saved. He bought it without ever seeing it in person. He did not care what condition it was in. He just wanted to be alone. The shuttle ride took 3 days. When Do-hyun finally saw Halo 9 through the viewport, his heart sank a little. The station was bigger than he expected, a massive ring of metal and glass spinning slowly against the stars. But it was dark. No lights, no signals, just a dead thing floating in the void. He docked his shuttle and stepped through the airlock. The darkness inside was complete. His enhanced eyes adjusted, showing him the corridor ahead in shades of gray and green. Dust floated everywhere. The air was thin and cold, barely enough to breathe. Something skittered in the shadows, probably a maintenance robot that had run out of power decades ago. Do-hyun smiled. It was perfect. He set up a small living space in one of the less damaged sections. He had brought supplies for 6 months, along with tools and spare parts. The work began immediately. Every day he crawled through corridors and access tubes, checking systems and making lists of what needed to be fixed. The station's bones were solid, the hull was intact, but everything else was broken. The power systems were dead. Life support was offline. The water recyclers were clogged with 70 years of mineral buildup. The communication arrays had been stripped by salvagers at some point, leaving only bare wires and empty mounting brackets. Do-hyun did not mind. He had always been good with his hands. The military had trained him to fix things as well as break them. And out here, alone in the silence, the work felt almost peaceful. There was no one shooting at him. No orders coming through his earpiece. Just the station and the stars and the slow rhythm of repair. After 2 weeks, he found the AI core. It was buried in a maintenance shaft, a small black box that the salvagers had missed. Do-hyun pulled it out and examined it. The casing was cracked, and some of the circuits were damaged, but the core itself seemed intact. He spent 3 days repairing it, replacing burned components and cleaning corroded connections. When he finally powered it on, a soft voice filled his helmet. "Hello, I am Maintenance Unit 774. How may I assist you?" The voice was simple and flat, like all basic AIs, but it was the first voice besides his own that Do-hyun had heard in months. He found himself smiling. "I'm going to call you Bomi," he said. "After my sister." "Acknowledged. Designation updated. I am now Bomi. How may I assist you, owner?" "Just Do-hyun. And you can start by helping me figure out how to get the main reactor online." The work went faster with Bomi's help. The AI could access the station's remaining sensors and provide information about systems that Do-hyun could not reach himself. Within a month, he had restored basic power to 3 sections of the station. Within 2 months, life support was functioning well enough that he could take off his helmet. The air was still cold and thin, but it was breathable. Do-yun began to feel something he had not felt in years. Not happiness exactly, but something close to it. A sense of purpose. A reason to wake up each morning. Then he found the door. He was clearing debris in Sector 7, a section that his salvage blueprints showed as empty cargo storage. The ceiling had partially collapsed here, and metal beams blocked the corridor. Do-hyun spent 2 days cutting through the wreckage, expecting to find nothing but empty rooms on the other side. Instead, he found a door. It was not like the other doors on the station. This one was reinforced with thick metal plating. There were no windows, no labels, no markings of any kind. And when Do-hyun checked his blueprints again, the door was not there. According to the official records, this section of the station was a solid wall. "Bomi," he said slowly. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes, Do-hyun. The door does not match any known station schematics. Construction materials suggest military-grade reinforcement. I am unable to identify the locking mechanism." Do-hyun stared at the door for a long time. The smart thing to do was leave it alone. He had come here for peace and quiet, not mysteries. Whatever was behind this door had been hidden for 70 years. It could stay hidden for 70 more. But he was a Marine. Marines did not walk away from locked doors. He pulled out his cutting torch and went to work. The metal was tough, tougher than anything else on the station. It took him 4 hours to cut through. When the door finally fell inward with a heavy clang, cold air rushed out from the darkness beyond. Do-hyun stepped through. His enhanced eyes adjusted to the darkness, revealing a corridor that stretched down into the station's depths. A corridor that should not exist. Emergency lights flickered on as his presence triggered ancient sensors. Red light filled the passage, showing walls lined with cables and conduits that looked far more advanced than anything else on Halo 9. "Bomi," he whispered. "What is this place?" "I do not know, Do-hyun, but I am detecting power signatures ahead. Something down there is still active." Do-hyun took a deep breath and started walking down into the hidden level. Behind him, the ruined door hung open like a wound in the station's side. Ahead, the red lights stretched on, leading him deeper into a secret that had been waiting 70 years to be found. The corridor went down at a steep angle, leading Do-hyun deeper into the station than he knew was possible. According to his blueprints, there was nothing below Sector 7 except empty space and hull plating. But the corridor kept going, lit by emergency lights that flickered red with every step he took. The walls were different here. The rest of Halo 9 was built from standard corporate materials, cheap and efficient. But this hidden level was constructed from something heavier, military-grade alloys, reinforced joints, the kind of construction Do-hyun had seen in classified installations during his years in the Marines. "Bomi, how deep does this go?" "I am detecting the corridor extends approximately 200 meters below the main station structure. There appear to be multiple chambers at the bottom. I cannot determine their purpose from here." Do-hyun kept walking. His boots echoed on the metal floor. The air grew colder the deeper he went, and there was a strange smell that he could not identify. Something chemical, something old. The corridor ended at another reinforced door, but this one stood open. Beyond it, Do-hyun found himself in a large chamber filled with equipment he did not recognize. Banks of computers lined the walls. Their screens dark, but their indicator lights still blinking slowly. Tables covered with scientific instruments stood in neat rows. And on the far wall, faded but still visible, was a symbol that made Do-hyun's blood run cold. The United Earth Intelligence Directorate. He had seen that symbol before, during a classified operation on the Outer Ring. A mission that officially never happened. A mission where he and his squad had stumbled into something they were not supposed to see and been ordered to forget everything under threat of imprisonment. This is a black site, Do-hyun said quietly. Government intelligence. Hidden inside a corporate station. That would explain the construction quality, Bomi replied. Government installations typically use superior materials. Shall I attempt to access the computer systems? Not yet. Let me see what else is here first. Do-hyun moved through the chamber carefully, examining everything without touching it. The equipment was old, but well preserved. 70 years of neglect, but the sealed environment had protected most of it from decay. He found storage containers filled with preserved food and water, medical supplies, emergency equipment. Whatever this place was, it had been designed to operate independently for long periods. He found the living quarters next. 30 small rooms, each containing a bed, a desk, and a storage locker. Personal items were scattered everywhere, as if the occupants had left in a hurry. Do-hyun saw photographs, clothing, data tablets, even children's drawings pinned to one wall. These people had lived here. They had made this hidden place their home. But where had they gone? The answer came when he found the central chamber. It was the largest room in the hidden level, circular and domed like a cathedral. Equipment covered every surface, most of it focused on the center of the room, and in that center, arranged in a perfect circle, stood 12 pods. Do-hyun recognized them immediately. Stasis pods, long-term hibernation units designed to preserve living beings for decades or even centuries. He had seen them used for deep space travel, for patients with incurable diseases waiting for future medicine, for prisoners too dangerous to execute but too valuable to kill. These pods were still active. Their displays glowed softly, showing vital signs and preservation status. Someone had connected them to an independent power source, a small reactor that hummed quietly in the corner of the room. Whoever had set this up had planned for the long term. Do-hyun approached the nearest pod and looked through the viewing window. His breath caught in his throat. The being inside was not human. It was Velthari. He would recognize that species anywhere. Insectoid bodies covered in hard black shells, multiple limbs, compound eyes that seemed to watch you even in death or sleep. The Velthari had been humanity's greatest enemy, a 10-year war that had killed billions on both sides, a war that Do-hyun had fought in from beginning to end. He checked the next pod. Another Velthari. The third pod held something different, an amphibian creature with blue-green skin and gill slits on its neck. A Kasari, the species that had remained neutral during the war, selling weapons and supplies to both sides while their diplomats spoke of peace. Do-hyun moved around the circle, checking each pod. 6 Velthari, 4 Kasari, and 2 humans, a man and a woman, their faces peaceful in frozen sleep. The displays showed dates. These beings had been placed in stasis 73 years ago, during the height of the human-Velthari war. Do-hyun stood in the center of the circle, surrounded by sleeping aliens and humans, his mind racing with questions. What was this place? Why were these beings here together? The war had been brutal, total. Humans and Velthari had tried to destroy each other. The idea of them sharing a hidden facility was insane. Bomi, he said, can you access the computers now? I need to know what this place was. Attempting access. The systems are heavily encrypted, but the encryption protocols are 70 years old. I should be able to break them given sufficient time. How much time? Approximately 11 days for full access. 11 days. Do-hyun looked around the chamber again, at the sleeping figures in their pods, at the blinking lights and humming machinery. 11 days to learn why enemies had been hidden together in a secret facility. 11 days to understand a mystery that someone had gone to great lengths to bury. He thought about leaving. Sealing the door, going back to his repairs, pretending he had never found this place. It would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But Do-hyun had lost too many friends in the war. He had killed too many Velthari soldiers, watched too many human colonies burn. If there was something here that explained why, if there was some truth hidden in these files, he needed to know. "Do it," he said. "Start the decryption. I want to know everything." He set up a small camp in the hidden level, bringing down supplies from his shuttle. He ate and slept surrounded by the stasis pods, watched over by the frozen faces of enemies and strangers. Sometimes he stood at the viewing windows for hours, studying the aliens inside. The Velthari looked smaller than he remembered, less terrifying, just sleeping creatures trapped in glass and metal. The Kasari he had never fought. They had stayed out of the war officially, though everyone knew they had profited from both sides. Looking at them now, Do-hyun felt a different kind of anger. At least the Velthari had been honest enemies. The Kasari had smiled and traded and grown rich while others died. On the fourth day, Bomi managed to decrypt the first batch of files. "Do-hyun, I have accessed preliminary documents. They appear to be meeting records and mission briefings. The content is disturbing." "Show me." The files appeared on his data tablet. Do-hyun read them slowly, his hands trembling as the words sank in. Meeting records from 75 years ago. 3 species sitting together in secret. Humans, Velthari, Kesari, discussing something they had all discovered independently. Signals from the outer reaches of the galaxy. Ancient signals. Automated responses from a civilization so old and so powerful that its defense systems had destroyed scout ships from all 3 species without any effort at all. The files called them the architects, and as Do-hyun read on, he began to understand why enemies had met in secret, why this facility existed, why everything he thought he knew about the war was a lie. The truth was worse than anything he had imagined. The decryption took 11 days, just as Bomi had predicted. 11 days during which Do-hyun barely slept. He ate only when his body demanded it, when his hands started shaking too badly to read the files appearing on his tablet. He drank water without tasting it. He forgot to wash, forgot to check the station's systems, forgot everything except the words scrolling across his screen. The files told a story that broke something inside him. 75 years ago, 3 species had made contact with each other for the first time. Humanity was still young and aggressive, spreading across the stars with hungry speed. The Velthari were ancient and territorial, their hive ships controlling vast regions of space. The Kasari were traders and negotiators, moving between civilizations like water through cracks. They met in secret. Not their governments, not their militaries. Just a small group of intelligence operatives and scientists who had stumbled onto the same discovery. Signals from beyond the galaxy's edge. Automated responses from something unimaginably old. The architects. The files contained sensor data that made Do-hyun's head hurt. Energy readings that should have been impossible. Defensive systems that had vaporized exploration vessels from all 3 species with casual ease. Whatever the architects were, they had been sleeping for millions of years, but their automated defenses were still active, still waiting, and the signals suggested they were beginning to wake up. The secret alliance had faced a terrible choice. They could reveal the truth to their governments, their people, the entire galaxy. But what would happen then? Panic, chaos. 3 species that barely tolerated each other would fragment into factions fighting over scraps while something ancient stirred in the outer darkness. Or they could prepare. Do-hyun read the meeting transcripts with growing horror. The logic was cold and perfect. None of their civilizations were ready. Their militaries were weak from peace. Their technologies had stagnated. Their populations were soft and comfortable. They needed to become stronger, faster, harder. They needed to advance their weapons and defenses by decades in just a few years. And nothing drove advancement like war. The human Velthari war had been manufactured. planned in detail by operatives from both sides, with Kesari intermediaries handling coordination. Every border incident that sparked tensions, every diplomatic failure that prevented peace, every atrocity that fed the hatred between species, all of it had been orchestrated. Do-Yun read reports written by Velthari commanders discussing how to provoke human retaliation. He read human intelligence memos outlining false flag attacks. He read Kesari communications coordinating weapons shipments to ensure both sides remained evenly matched. The war prolonged as long as possible. 10 years of war. Billions dead on both sides. Entire planets burned to ash. And behind it all, a secret alliance pushing their species toward strength through suffering. The files showed the results. Human military technology had advanced by 30 years during the decade of war. Velthari hive ships had evolved new defensive capabilities. Both species had developed weapons and shields that would have taken generations to create in peacetime. Even the Kesari, officially neutral, had used the war to refine their trading networks and intelligence operations. The alliance had worked. All three species were stronger than they had been before. But the cost. God, the cost. Do-Yun thought about his first squad. 7 Marines who had fought beside him on the colony world of New Pyongyang. A Velthari bombardment had killed them all, 30,000 civilians along with them. He had been the only survivor, pulled from the rubble with half his body destroyed. He thought about Sergeant Kim Ji-won, who had saved his life twice before dying in the assault on Hive Station 9. About Private Lee Suji, barely 20 years old, who had thrown herself on a Velthari plasma charge to save her squad. About all the others, the ones whose faces he still saw in his dreams. They had died for a lie. The anger that rose in him was beyond anything he had felt before. Not the hot rage of combat, but something cold and terrible. He wanted to destroy something, to hurt someone, to make the people responsible pay for what they had done. But the people responsible were sleeping in pods around him, and many of them were aliens who had lost just as much as humanity had. He read further. The secret alliance had known their conspiracy could not last forever. Eventually, the war would end and questions would be asked. They had planned for this. The key members would go into stasis, hidden in a facility that no one knew existed. They would sleep until the time came to face the architects together. They would wake up when they were needed. But something had gone wrong. The facility's external communications had failed. The signal that was supposed to wake them never came. And so, they had slept on, year after year, decade after decade, while the galaxy moved on without them. The war had ended 20 years after they entered stasis. Humanity had won, barely. The Velthari civilization was shattered, their survivors scattered across refugee flotillas. The Kesari continued trading, their role in the conflict never discovered. And the architects continued to stir in the outer darkness, their signals growing stronger with each passing year. Do-Hyun finished reading the last file and sat in silence for a long time. The stasis pods hummed around him. The frozen faces of conspirators and war criminals looked back at him through their viewing windows. He had a choice to make. He could destroy everything, smash the computers, cut the power to the pods, let the sleepers die and their secrets vanish forever. The galaxy would never know the truth. The fragile peace between humans and surviving Velthari would continue. History would remember the war as a tragic conflict between incompatible species, nothing more. Or he could wake them. The architects were still out there. The files showed their signals growing stronger year by year. Whatever was coming, it was bigger than old grudges and manufactured wars. It was bigger than the lies that had shaped galactic history. And maybe, just maybe, the species that had been strong enough to survive a fake war could be strong enough to face a real threat together. Do-Yun stood up and walked to the human female's pod. Her file said her name was Han Yuna. She had been a director-level intelligence operative, one of the primary architects of the conspiracy. Her hands were stained with the blood of millions. But she also knew more about the architects than anyone alive. His finger hovered over the revival sequence. One touch, and she would begin to wake. One touch, and everything would change. Do-Yun thought about his dead friends, about the lie they had died for, about the ancient threat that did not care about human grief or Velthari pride, or the games that small species played with each other. He pressed the button. The pod began to hum as the revival sequence activated. Inside, Han Yuna's frozen body started to warm. Do-Hyun stepped back and waited for the woman who had helped destroy his world to wake up and explain why. Han Yuna came out of stasis, gasping like a drowning woman. Her body convulsed as 70 years of frozen sleep released its grip on her muscles. She coughed, choked, and vomited the preservation fluid that had filled her lungs. The pod's medical systems pumped stimulants into her blood, forcing her heart to beat faster, pushing oxygen to her starving brain. Do-Yun watched from a distance, his hand resting on his sidearm. He did not know what to expect from this woman. She had been an intelligence operative, trained to kill and lie and manipulate. She had helped start a war that killed billions. Whatever she was dangerous. But when her eyes finally focused on him, standing there in his worn marine jacket with the insignia still visible on his shoulder, she did not look dangerous. She looked old, tired, like someone waking from a nightmare that would never end. "How long?" Her voice was rough, damaged by the preservation fluid. 73 years. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something hard had returned to her gaze. "The signal. Did we receive the awakening signal?" "No. I found you by accident. I bought this station. I was restoring it when I discovered the hidden level." Yuna tried to sit up and failed. Her muscles had not recovered enough yet. She lay back against the pod's interior and stared at the ceiling. 73 years, she repeated. "We were supposed to sleep for 20 at most. Until the preparations were complete. Until we were ready." "Ready for what?" "You read the files." It was not a question. "You know about the architects." "I know about your war, the one you manufactured, the one that killed my friends." Yuna turned her head to look at him. Her eyes were brown and cold, like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. "Yes, we did that. We built a war from nothing and watched it consume billions of lives. Does knowing why make it better?" "No. I did not think so." She coughed again, her body still fighting to recover. "Why did you wake me? You could have let us sleep forever, or pulled the power and let us die. That would have been justice, from a certain point of view." Do-Yun had asked himself the same question for days. The answer was simple and complicated at the same time. Because the architects are still out there. The signals are still getting stronger. And if something is coming that scared 3 species enough to start a fake war, I want to understand it before it arrives. For the first time, something like respect flickered across Yuna's face. A Marine who thinks beyond the next battle. Unusual. "I had 16 years to learn, most of it the hard way." Over the next 3 days, Do-Yun helped Yuna recover. He brought her food and water, monitored her vital signs, and listened as she explained the things the files had not told him. The technical details of the architect signals, the failed attempts to communicate, the terrifying glimpses of power that had convinced 3 rival species to work together in secret. "We were like children finding a sleeping giant," Yuna said on the second day. "A giant with weapons beyond anything we could imagine. We knew that if it woke up angry, if it saw us as a threat, there would be nothing left of any of us. So you decided to make us stronger through war." "We decided to make everyone stronger. Humans, Velthari, Kasari, all 3 species working together in secret while appearing to fight. It was monstrous. We knew it was monstrous, but the alternative was extinction. And you got to decide that for billions of people? Without asking them? Yuna's expression did not change. Yes, we made that choice. We will answer for it eventually, to whatever god or court or angry survivor finally judges us. But I will not apologize for trying to save our species. All our species. On the fourth day, Do-hyun woke the first Velthari. Her name was Keth, daughter of Keth, and she had been a military commander during the war. Her file listed dozens of engagements, including the orbital bombardment of New Pyongyang. 30,000 humans dead. Do-hyun's entire squad except for himself. She came out of stasis more smoothly than Yuna had. Velthari biology handled preservation better than human bodies did. Within hours, she was standing on her 4 legs, her compound eyes examining every detail of the chamber around her. When she saw Do-hyun's marine insignia, she went very still. "3rd Assault Division," she said through her translator, her natural voice a series of clicks and hisses. "You attacked Hive Station 9. I lost 1,100 soldiers that day." "I was there. I know. I watched the recordings afterward. You fought well. For a mammal." They stood across the chamber from each other, surrounded by pods full of sleeping conspirators. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "You bombed New Pyongyang," Do-hyun said. 30,000 dead. 7 of them were my squad. I remember. It was necessary to provoke a response. Your government was considering peace talks. We needed to keep the war going." Her translator rendered the words flatly, without emotion. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I do not expect it." "Good, because you will not get it." They woke the others over the following weeks. 4 more Velthari, 4 Kesari, including a merchant prince named Horu, who had coordinated weapon shipments throughout the war. The other human, a man named Cha Minho, who had run the field operations on the human side. The station filled with voices and movement and tension. Old enemies sharing space, eating together. Working side by side while hatred simmered beneath every interaction. There were arguments, shouting matches. Twice, Do-hyun had to physically separate Keth and Minho before they killed each other. But slowly, something changed. They began sharing information about the architects, comparing notes from the original alliance, reviewing the 70 years of data that Bomi had collected from the station's passive sensors. The signals were stronger now, much stronger than they had been before. Whatever was waking up in the outer darkness, it was almost awake. "We are out of time," Yuna said during one meeting, all 12 of them gathered in the central chamber. "The original plan assumed we would have 20 years to prepare after the war ended. We have had 70 years of sleep instead. The galaxy has not prepared. It has forgotten the threat even existed." "Then we remind them," Keth said. "We reveal everything. The alliance, the war, the architects. Let the truth burn away the comfortable lies." "That would destroy any chance of cooperation," Horu argued, his blue-green skin flushing darker with agitation. "Your species would tear each other apart fighting over blame. There would be war again, real war this time, while the real enemy approaches." "Then what do you suggest?" Minho demanded. "We hide the truth forever? Pretend we are innocent researchers who just happened to discover an ancient threat?" The argument went on for hours. Do-hyun listened without speaking, watching these people who had shaped galactic history through manipulation and murder. They were brilliant, ruthless, completely committed to the survival of their species, all their species, and they had no idea what to do next. Finally, during a pause in the shouting, he spoke. "You are all thinking like the people you were 70 years ago, spy masters and commanders and merchants. You are thinking about control, about managing information, about manipulating outcomes." He looked around the chamber at human and alien faces. But you do not control anything anymore. You are 12 people on a station that officially does not exist. You have no armies, no networks, no power except what you know." "Then what do you suggest?" Yuna asked. "Tell the truth. Not to governments or militaries. To everyone. Put the data out there. The signals, the recordings, the threat assessment. Let people make their own choices about how to respond." "That is insane," Horu said. "The panic alone would destabilize every major civilization." "Maybe. Or maybe people are stronger than you give them credit for. Maybe they can handle the truth better than you handled it 70 years ago." Silence fell over the chamber. 12 conspirators, their plans destroyed by decades of sleep, faced a future they had never imagined. And somewhere in the outer darkness, something ancient continued to stir. The vote was not unanimous. Horu and 2 of the Velthari voted against revealing anything. They wanted to rebuild their networks first, establish contacts, control the flow of information the way they always had. But the others voted with Do-Yun. The truth would come out. Yuna handled the technical side, compiling the data into packages that could be broadcast across every frequency, uploaded to every network. Keth provided military assessments of the architect threat, cold and precise analyses that made clear just how outmatched all 3 species would be if they faced it divided. Even Horu eventually helped, once he understood that his vote had been overruled, using his old trading contacts to ensure the information reached places that official channels might miss. The broadcast went out 3 months after Do-Hyun had first cut through the hidden door. Every major news network, every government communication system, every independent station and ship and colony that could receive a signal. The truth about the war, the truth about the architects. Everything. The response was exactly as chaotic as Horu had predicted. On Earth, riots broke out in a dozen cities. People who had lost family in the war demanded justice. Politicians who had built careers on hatred of the Velthari suddenly found themselves exposed as puppets of a larger game. The United Earth government collapsed within a week, replaced by emergency councils that barely held things together. The Velthari flotillas fractured even further. Some called for renewed war against humanity, seeing the revelation as proof that humans could never be trusted. Others argued that the alliance had been right, that the manufactured war had made their species strong enough to survive the aftermath of defeat. Fighting broke out between factions. Ships were destroyed. More lives were lost. The Kasari simply vanished. Their merchant fleet scattered to hidden ports and neutral stations, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. They had survived for millennia by avoiding commitment. They would survive this too, one way or another. For 6 months, the galaxy burned with anger and confusion. Do-Hyun watched the news feeds from the station, seeing the consequences of his decision play out across inhabited space. There were moments when he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake, if the conspirators had been right all along, if some truths were too dangerous to set free. But then the messages started arriving. At first, just a few. Scientists who had studied the architect data and wanted to share their findings. Military officers asking for more details about the threat assessment. Journalists requesting interviews with the station's inhabitants. Small lights in the darkness. Individual people reaching out because they wanted to help. Then more. A lot more. A Velthari research vessel arrived at the station 6 months after the broadcast, carrying a delegation of scientists who had broken from their flotilla to study the architect threat. They brought equipment, data, and a willingness to work alongside humans that would have been unthinkable a year before. Human ships followed. Some military, some civilian, some so heavily modified that Do-Hyun could not tell what they had originally been. They carried researchers, engineers, volunteers of every kind. People who had seen the truth and decided that facing an ancient enemy together was better than dying alone. Even a few Kasari appeared eventually. Younger ones, mostly, traders who had grown tired of their elders' cowardice. They brought resources and connections, the practical skills that would be needed to turn this gathering into something real. The station that Do-hyun had bought for solitude became something else entirely. Corridors that had been empty for 70 years filled with voices in 3 languages. Laboratories hummed with activity as scientists from all 3 species worked together on problems that had seemed impossible. The docking bays that Do-hyun had repaired for his own small shuttle now hosted dozens of ships from across the galaxy. He found himself in the observation deck one night, looking down at Earth turning slowly in the distance. The blue and white planet that he had not visited in years. The home he had left behind because he could not face the people who lived there. Keth found him there. The Velthari commander moved silently on her 4 legs, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "You are troubled," she said. "I am thinking about the people who died. In the war. In the chaos after the revelation. All the lives lost because of choices that I made, that we made. You did not start the war, you did not create the architects, you only told the truth about both. Is that enough? To balance the scales?" Keth was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her translator rendered her voice softer than usual. "On New Pyongyang, I gave the order to bombard civilian areas, 30,000 dead, including your squad. I did this knowing that most of them were innocent, knowing that their deaths would serve no purpose except to prolong a war that was itself a lie." She turned to face him directly. "I cannot balance those scales. Nothing I do will bring those people back. Nothing will undo the choice I made." "Then why are you here?" "Because the choice I make now still matters. The war is over. The dead are dead. But the living remain. And what we do with our remaining time is not yet written." Her compound eyes seemed to focus on something far beyond the observation deck's windows. "I am here because I would rather die fighting beside former enemies than hiding from an ancient evil. I am here because the future can still be different from the past." Do-hyun thought about that for a long time. About his dead friends and the war that had been a lie. About the conspiracy that had shaped galactic history and the 12 sleepers who had planned it all. About the architects stirring in the outer darkness and the ragged alliance gathering on his station to face them. "The original alliance failed because it was built on lies," he said finally. "They engineered conflict instead of cooperation. They created warriors, but destroyed trust. Yes. So we build something different. Not manipulation and secrets, truth and choice. Let people decide for themselves whether to fight. Let them choose their allies with open eyes." Keth made a sound that her translator rendered as laughter, though it sounded like stones grinding together. "You are a strange human, Park Do-hyun. A marine who thinks like a philosopher. A soldier who builds instead of destroys. I spent 16 years being what the military made me. Now I get to choose what I become." In the months that followed, the station grew. New sections were added, constructed from materials donated by all 3 species, research facilities, training grounds. Diplomatic chambers where old enemies learned to speak to each other without reaching for weapons. Do-hyun found himself at the center of it all, not as a leader exactly, but as something else. A symbol, maybe. Proof that a broken marine who had bought a derelict station for peace and quiet could become something more. The architects were still out there. Their signals grew stronger every month, and the scientists reported disturbing patterns in the data. Something was definitely waking up. Something that did not care about human grief or Velthari pride, or the games that small species played with each other. When it finally opened its ancient eyes, it would see a galaxy full of young civilizations that might look like threats or resources or simply insects to be swatted aside. But it would also see something else. An alliance built not on manufactured war, but on shared truth. Former enemies working together, not because they had forgotten their differences, but because they had chosen to face a greater threat together. Scientists and soldiers, traders and refugees, all of them reaching toward a future that might never come. Do-hyun stood in the observation deck, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Humans and Velthari and Kesari, coming together in a way that the original conspirators had never imagined possible. The truth had set them free, not to forget the past, but to build something better from its ashes. He thought about his sister Bomi back on Earth. He had finally answered her messages a few weeks ago, told her everything about the station and the conspiracy and the choice he had made. She had cried, and then she had laughed, and then she had told him she was proud of him, that their parents would have been proud of him too. He thought about his dead friends, the ones who had died in a manufactured war. He could not bring them back. Nothing would ever make that right. But he could honor their memory by building something worth protecting. By ensuring that the next war, the real war, the one that mattered, would not be fought by species divided against each other. Humanity would not face the darkness alone. And that, Do-hyun thought as he watched another ship dock at his station, might just be enough. The future was coming. And for the first time in his life, Park Do-hyun was ready to meet it.